All right, so today is May the 4th. Master Duel has launched a new season, Season 17. That means we've been reset from Diamond 1 back down to Platinum 5. Will I go for another Diamond climb? Hopefully. Hopefully time permits. I haven't had a lot of time to play. I've actually only played one match yesterday, May the 3rd, and one match today at around 6:30 after work. But yeah, life is pretty busy. So won both of them though. Went second in this one. I played this just a couple minutes ago, so maybe I'll play that one for you. But I want to go over the deck list that we've been using because of course we're going with FLOOWANDEREEZE. So just going over what should your list look like if you're playing this in Season 17, in my opinion, with tier limit still being tier 0. 1 DD Crow as a searchable interruption. I've explained this in my previous deck list video. I tested running 2, even 3, and I actually don't like drawing this card. I'd rather search it off the Robina when I need it. So once I have engine set up, if I just get the Eaglin and Robina in rotation, I can then search for the Crow if I need to. And this card, in my opinion, is a good complement instead of running a second Stree, just because the Grave Shufflers are still around. So having one Stree is good for matchups where you don't encounter Grave Shufflers, but otherwise it's kind of like a fizzle and more of a detriment at times than actually having it and trying to use it. Yes, you can bait out Shufflers, you can force them to use the Shufflers with it, but it's usually very rare occasions where you get the benefit of trading out the Stree and it not resolving, meaning you can't summon off the Stree effect resolving, than actually fizzling out the Shuffler. So 3 Robina, 3 Eaglin is pretty standard. 2 Toucan, just as an extra bird name in rotation. This card can also help make your Advent of Adventures live, so having more bird names in rotation is useful. It's really interesting. I hope Konami gives this deck more support in the future, maybe with like another level 1 bird, Robina-esque, because this is really your core starter. Like once this gets in rotation, if it's not stopped, it's the deck is pretty strong, obviously, right? That's how we win a lot of matches. So that's the standard small bird lineup. As for your support cards, Dimension Shifter, 1 Apex still, only 1 Ryza. I've seen people running this at 2, and while in the event attribute 4 you ran 2, I think 1 is definitely what you want to go for. This card I find myself going for less and less in the actual game. I'd rather go for double M-Pin, I'd rather set up the Apex Negate. This card is kind of like a win more card in regular ladder, just because you're locking down your opponent. It can definitely come in clutch, don't get me wrong, but in most scenarios, the M-Pin is enough to lock down your opponent just because of the floodgate effect of negating special summon monsters in attack mode. So 1 Terraforming, which can become a brick if you draw into map. Now your Terraforming is dead. So for that reason, you might want to consider playing something like a Necro Valley still, as Tear Lament is still pretty prevalent in the metagame. So Necro Valley isn't ultra rare, but it does stop cards from moving in and out of the graveyard, which would stop the Tear Lament cards. 1 Gold Sarcophagus. If you don't have this, I would say this is a must ultra rare craft. The reason is because if you draw any bird with Gold Sarcophagus, your hand is unbricked. Because Gold Sark banishes Robina, then you can normal summon a Stree, banish the Gold Sark, bring back the Robina. You can banish the Robina with Gold Sark, obviously, and then summon Toucan. Toucan target the Robina, bring it back, and then you can play, obviously, right? So this, I think, is a must. You definitely want to play this. 2 Pot of Duality, because it's limited to 2. Hopefully Konami will unlimit this card now that Runic has been hit, because I think it was hit because of Runic. You have to play 3 Extravagance now, in my opinion. I was playing 2 before, but I found 3 is just better. You want to see some of these pot cards to just dig into either engine or support cards for your engine, because if you get your engine rolling and you get like a D-Fissure up or a Shifter up, the deck is extremely hard to stop. And it's I don't want to say FTK against Tear Limit, but it's very hard for Tear Limit to come back from that. And then, of course, the 1 of Pot of Prosperity. 1 map, because it's limited to 1, unfortunately. I've already voiced my opinion on this in a couple videos. No idea why they limited this to 1 other than it's limited in the OCG, but it's kind of a cop-out in my opinion that they would release Tear Limit and then nerf the deck that beats Tear Limit. I mean, we're still beating Tear Limit, but like, 2 map is just nice because when you get even lead, now you're either like forced to keep map or you're going to lose your map for the entire game. Just whereas, if you got even lead and you had like Advent of Adventure set, you'd activate Advent, banish the M-Pin, grab back your second map, let your first map get banished, then you can continue to play in the following turn. Now you don't have access to those kind of strategies when you get like evenly matched. So it is a little unfortunate, and it does weaken the deck because this card is one of your main starters. Map plus any bird makes you play just like Gold Sark and any bird, right? So because we lost the second map, that's why you want to replace it with the second Gold Sark. Gold Sark is essentially a 1-turn map. So think of it that way. 3-Dimensional Fissure, again, pretty self-explanatory. This card is really FTK, first turn kill against a lot of decks. If Tear Limit can't out this with, Usually what they only play for back row removal is Heartbeat. So that shuffles this card back into the deck. If they don't have that, it's very hard for them to play around this. I actually got into a very simplified game state where the opponent was literally normal summoning like Kelbeck, normal summon Rhinoheart, no effects, and just trying to beat me down because I bricked. And then as soon as I got the engine rolling, I had like 1 turn left. I had like 1,500 life points. I finally drew into, I think it was like an Unexplored Winds, and I had like an Eaglin, and then I was able to start playing, and all this stuff was getting banished, and I won that game still. So this card can definitely stop your opponent from playing, and it's good against a lot of other decks you might run into as well, good against Sprite and things like that. So it's definitely a card that you want 3 of, and it's just a rare, so it's good for the metagame right now. Unexplored Winds, playing 2 just because in the grind game this is very helpful. If this gets banished or removed, you can search out another one without having to bother trying to recur it with like Stree, and like Stree banish it from your graveyard, 2 can bring it back. If it gets banished face down, you can search out the other one, kind of like the same concept why you would play 2 map. And just sometimes drawing it in your opening hand can be really strong. So 2, I think, is a very good ratio. 2 Book of Moon, ideally you want to play 3, but this card can be a little bricky, but it is a very, very strong interruption, both to save your birds by booking them face down, dodging things like Imperm, Sulliek, Dragostapelia, and booking the opponent's card. Like you wouldn't really book your own card in a Dragostapelia scenario, you'd book the Dragostapelia, or book like a Baguska or something like that that'll allow you to play. So playing 3, if you could fit 3 in, is good, but I think 2 is just fine as well, because again, you might have a chance to draw into them with the pot cards. And it's, again, one of those things that you don't need it unless it actually comes up in a scenario where you do run into an Imperm or something like that, and you do need the Book of Moon. So you don't actually always want to see this card, but it can definitely be helpful. Keep in mind, though, if you do book your bird and then you tribute over that face-down bird, it will go to the graveyard. It won't be banished. I actually lost the game because I forgot that. I booked my Robina, and I attributed Robina and Eaglin, and then my Robina was in the graveyard, and I didn't have a way to recycle it because it wasn't in the banished pile. So keep that in mind. Advent of Adventure, 3 of, mandatory. If you don't have it, it is the ultra rare that you will have to craft for sure. This card is, again, another starter enabler. Banish any bird, search for a bird, banish a bird or a winged beast, grab a map. So it's like 4 terraformings, right? You have terraforming, you have 3 Advent of Adventure, but this card combined with any bird gets you to map. So, if you have like Eaglin and Stree and you're like, I can't play because I don't have the Robina in rotation, you activate this, you banish like the Stree, you search for map. Map plus Eaglin is like the strongest starter in the game for this deck. So it's very good for that. 3 main deck evenly still. Very good card. I think it's mandatory just because going second, you don't have a way to break very large boards. Like your board is very small, right? You put up an M-pin and you put up trap. So being able to out a very big board that maybe doesn't put up a lot of negates is something that you need to do. Again, if you've watched any of my FLOOWANDEREEZE gameplay, which I will link in the description, you've seen how we've been able to bait out negates to activate evenly, or go vice versa. Use the evenly to bait out the negate and then play through with our engine and setting up our engine, because having something like Unexplored Winds can help out the opponent's board as well by tributing off their back row, tributing off their monsters that are like unaffected and can't be destroyed by this, that, or the other. Unexplored Winds outs all of that. So it's very, very powerful. And then I run 2 Dreaming Town. I tested 1, I liked 1, but 2 I think is very strong, just because, again, you don't always have the ability to recycle the first one with Stree and Toucan, or to even banish it out of the graveyard for the flip down effect and then recycle it with Toucan. So just having the second one to be searchable is good, as well as same thing with Unexplored Winds, is you can sometimes hard draw this card, and it's actually not bad in your opening hand, because that means off of M-Pin, now you can search for the 1-of map instead of trap, or you can search for Unexplored Winds. So it just gives you a little bit more flexibility. Playing more of your actual engine helps you set up a stronger end board and gives you more interruptions during the opponent's turn. So that's pretty much the main deck. The extra deck doesn't really matter too much. I just play utility cards, so I don't think I've ever really used the extra deck. But like, I think if you're going to play this, the main things you'd want is like the Assembled Nightingale, into Downard, into Zeus for a board wipe. Like, this is important because of things like Zombie World, but Zombie World is not played in the format, so you shouldn't really run into this. It actually wouldn't surprise me to see tier limit decks main decking 1 Zombie World, because they do play terraforming and they play Perla Rhino, and just having another terraforming target in Zombie World. Zombie World does stop a lot of the tier limit fusions because their monsters are no longer Aqua. They're zombies now in the graveyard and on field. But it shuts down FLOOWANDEREEZE completely, right? So if I run into Zombie World, I have no anti-Zombie World tech in the main deck. Like, I lose to Zombie World. So like, I'd have to go for Zeus in that case. Or like, maybe one of the Nightmare Phoenix, Daruma Doll, which is target 1 spell and trap you control, target 1 that your opponent controls, and then destroy them. But other than that, yeah, there's no other main deck form of removal. Whereas in previous formats, you may have run Cosmic Cyclone, you may run a few other potential spell and trap negates, but it can be very hard to play around Zombie World. But again, it's not really a thing in the meta. So that's the deck list. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and yeah, stay tuned for more, hopefully, grinding to Diamond and Diamond 1 maybe, Flow Undereeze gameplay.